There was a certain piece of research that I came across that said that 71% of employees in this country rated themselves or said they were either disengaged or actively disengaged in the companies they worked in.
The culture before I got here was certainly very different. I don't think it was a culture that really listened and engaged people. And one of the things through the process with Jim is asking and listening to feedback and incorporating that feedback from all employees in the decisions that we make.
I've been in business 25 years. We were fortunate enough for first two hires. They understood the vision, the work ethic, but then we started to hire more people, and that's when things didn't go so well. He helped us define job descriptions, preferred requirements. Big for us is what Jim put together as a performance appraisal, which occurs quarterly.
What I felt was missing before Jim got here was a sense of cohesiveness. He met with the management team first and helped to decide what do our values mean to us. And we sat and went through every single employee and offered them the chance to give their input on what the values meant to them.
Our process at Rising Sun Consultants is to meet with the individuals in the company to determine what's happening, what's the problem, what's the pain. From there to develop a unique strategy or process of how we're going to address that they get to own.
To determine our cultural values, we let every employee talk about what are the values that should be a part of our culture, and then after we determine those 6 values, what are the things that define them.
And by Jim's ability to create this program that is so quantifiable, it really helps us navigate those situations. He has been a mentor whether he likes it or not. He just has been.
The process of going through the value creation and the culture creation with Jim has allowed our team to be unstoppable, and I really feel like we can attack any problem that's put in front of us.
Meetings are engaging. We have a lot of fun. In 2017, we placed number 20 on the Best Places to Work survey out of employers in Pennsylvania.
When you see those results, you can't help but to get excited. In a small way, as a company, as our mission, we get to impact the world around us and make better places for people to work and live. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see everybody out today, and at least here in central Pennsylvania, it's been a bit of a sunny day and warming up a bit, although the clouds are coming back again. I know probably folks are getting tired of the rain, but I'm glad you took some time out today to join us. As always, I'm going to start with a question and have you give some responses, but our topic today is how to deal with a coworker who's negative, or to deal with a negative coworker. And I thought we'd kind of tackle this from 2 perspectives today. One is a coworker, a colleague, a peer, and then also as a supervisor, manager, leader, what do we do? How do we deal with kind of those negative folks like that? But we'll kind of tackle that as we go along. So to start off, what I'd love to hear your thoughts on, and as always, just type in the chat and share what you're thinking. It's good to see some familiar names. Hi, Teresa. It's good to see you back again, and others. So I would love to hear, when we talk about a negative coworker, what does that look like? What does it mean? How does negativity show up, I guess, would be a great way to look at it. When we think of that person or those people and we say, oh, they're just so negative, and I would love to hear 2 thoughts. One is, what does that look like and how does it show up to be negative? But also, what does it feel like? What's the impact on you and others around when you have those negative people around you? So one or both those questions, just like to see some of your thoughts as you share them, and then we'll kind of dive into addressing it. So what does a negative coworker, what do they look like? What does negative look like? How does it show up? And what is the impact, or how does it feel when you have to be around those negative folks? Yeah, Teresa, I think those are great descriptors of the whining and complaining about anything and everything, right? They'll find something to complain and whine about, and draining to work with. I'm going to come back to that word draining. I'll try to remember that And if I forget, someone just type in draining and remind me that. I want to talk about that for a second. Laura, you said always saying they do this or that always has a negative response. Okay. So I think, Laura, that what partially is that saying is the they is they're never really willing to talk about who or specifics. It's just kind of these lump groups of people of they because they don't really want to deal with it. I think that's very fair. What's interesting, and Teresa, I'm going to kind of tackle that draining for just a moment while others share their thoughts. What I find interesting about negativity in employees or coworkers, whether we're the leader, manager, supervisor, and it's some of our team members, or whether it's a coworker, people we have to work around, that they're draining, right? It kind of sucks energy from us, right? I've shared that in the past, and out on our YouTube page, you can see as I've shared in the past, a whole bunch of free videos out there that are like 3 to 5 minutes each. One of them I talked about this bucket of energy. And a lot of times what we hear folks say is, I just don't have time. And I think what that really translates into is I don't have the energy. And I think it's because of people like this, and there's other things, but this is clearly one of those big contributors to the sucking of energy in our lives, that how much brain power and energy and thought process do we have to give to these folks? Not only do they just take our time because of the whining and complaining, but the energy they take from us, right? Just that energy to get up in the morning. They just kind of take it from us, which means we have less to give to productivity, to other people. And so I think, thank you, Teresa. I think that's a great descriptor. When we kind of threw this topic out, some of the comments I heard from folks over the last few weeks, one comment I thought was very interesting, and it was simply this, and it was kind of this notion of it's this easy as we just walk away. That's it. That's the solution. And I was kind of thinking about it going, is it really that easy? Is that simple? If so, then our webinar today is about 3.5 minutes long, because I'm like, oh, we deal with negative coworkers by just walk away. Got it? Okay. And then we say goodbye, have a great day, right? Obviously, though, as I thought about it, I went, there's something just doesn't fully make 100% sense to me yet. And so I had to wrestle with that a bit. So when you think about these whining and complaining folks and how draining it is, they're constantly referring to they, put it on everyone else, their lack of ownership. I got thinking about one solution could be, right? So in this context of just being a coworker, we don't necessarily have any sort of authority or position available to us. So we have to use influence and persuasion and somehow figure out how do we deal with the relationship. And walking away could be a solution, of course. And in some cases that would be true. And I guess when I think about that, when would walking away make sense? And so as I was kind of processing through this and just preparing for our time today, I thought, well, if there's a coworker that I very rarely ever have to see, deal with, they're in a different department, a different location, and, a handful of times a year I have to interact with them. It's very minimal. I might be more prone to say, well, maybe walking away is not a bad solution. Is it really worth the investment of time and energy? The other part of when we deal with negativity and negative coworkers is really thinking about what level of relationship capital do I have with that person? And, what do I mean by relationship capital? It's simply what kind of investment do I have with them and do they have with me, so that anything that I might do or say, how meaningful or helpful would it be? So if we go all the way to, you think about you're walking through the grocery store, maybe you've got kids and your kids with you, and someone decides to provide their unsolicited wisdom and advice about your parenting style. Complete stranger. Well, we kind of oftentimes just dismiss that because I have no idea who they are. I don't know anything about them. They don't have any relationship capital with me. So it really diminishes the influence and persuasion or impact they're going to have. So I take that kind of thinking and say, well, excuse me, if it's an employee that I don't really need to see much or interact with much, I have very little to no relationship capital, walking away really may be the best solution. I think about it is how much if I put investment into trying to give feedback or do some of the things we're going to talk about today, is it really going to be of any benefit? And if there's zero relationship capital or very little, then I'm thinking, it may actually just create more angst, right? Either one, they're just going to ignore me, or two, they may actually just lash out and decide to get into it. I'm like, am I really prepared for that? And is there really going to be a good outcome from that? And I'm like, probably not. So when I think about the strategy of just walk away, I'm not sure in that case how much that really helps us unless there's just no relationship capital. So then I began thinking, though, in most of our cases, when we talk about this whining, complaining, they're always blaming, they do this, they do that, type of negative responses. I think that these are usually the people that we have to spend time around. We interact with them somewhat regularly, maybe even daily or multiple times a day, but at least several times a week. They're part of our daily and weekly lives. That walking away, I think, well, how does that help us? What it suggests to me, that solution of just walk away suggests that by doing that, somehow it becomes better. And I think, well, at the moment, it helps us and kind of helps prevent us maybe from saying something we're going to regret. And so in that sense, yeah, I can see that may make sense. If we're not in a good emotional place where we can be calm and patient, professional, rational, then maybe walking away is a good thing. But in the long run, I think walking away still to me becomes less helpful than what it may originally sound like. So what do we do? How do we deal with these folks that are negative? Well, one of the things that I would encourage us not to do is to go around to everyone around them and complain about them. All right. So let's not have us become one of those negative, whiny, complaining employees about the employee who's negative, whining, and complaining, right? So let's make sure that we're not running around to everybody else and complaining about them. Again, I think that just makes it worse, and that adds to it. So let's kind of dive into then. So what do we do? And here's kind of where I begin. One is I check myself and make sure, am I in an okay place? Do I have the kind of relationship capital? Have I invested in that person enough that having a candid and honest conversation with them is going to be helpful and meaningful? If I'm not there, then one of the strategies I'd recommend is let's go talk to somebody, an appropriate person, maybe our supervisor, for example, where we can share honestly, but also it's appropriate person to share with, and ask them, can you help me role play, walk through strategies or solutions of how I'm going to go talk to that person? At least share your feelings ahead of time with that trusted person that's appropriate, so that you kind of deal with some of your own emotions before you go talk to that employee, that coworker who's negative. Because the last thing we want to do is let our emotions kind of come out, right? And that's usually going to make it worse. And we've talked about this in other webinars together. Our emotions oftentimes in these cases become one of our worst enemies, because we react to our frustration, to our angst, to how they tick us off, or, I'm just so tired of you complaining all the time, and I want to just literally look and say, would you just shut up, right? And obviously we can say, well, that's probably not going to get us there. That's probably not going to be helpful. So we need to make sure that we're fully prepared emotionally and mentally to go talk to that person. And Teresa, I just want to highlight what you're saying. Walking away may impede our work, as we may need something from them for our work. Absolutely right. I think you're right. In the cases, and more often than not, these are the folks that we're going to have to interact with. So walking away, well, all it does is just prolong or postpone the inevitable. And that is, we're eventually going to have to deal with it, right? Or we're just going to wait until we explode. Because, again, our emotions are they're cumulative by nature. In other words, if we don't deal with it, they don't just go away. They might be hidden for a little while, but then the next time it's just compounded, right? Because it's cumulative. It keeps adding up until what we hear when people say, I can't take it anymore. I've had it up to here. That's the straw that broke the camel's back, and I explode. And I say and do things that aren't appropriate or helpful. I find, so as we kind of dive into this, one of the interesting themes is this notion we say, when we say the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think I've shared this before, that 11th straw, right? We say that's the straw that did it. And I actually have to step back and kind of encourage us to think, is it really? Is that 11th straw the one that broke the camel's back, or was it the 10 before that we never dealt with? The 11th one, more often than not, is actually not the issue at all. And it's usually not even a big deal, but it's the one that stacked on top of the other 10, I just can't take it. We explode, and then people around us are like, what was that about? Over that issue? What they don't understand, it's really not about the 11th, it's about the 10 before. So again, to me, the starting point is, how do we prepare ourselves emotionally and mentally to go have dialogue and conversation with this individual to try to figure out how do we move forward, right? The second part of it is, how do we prepare ourselves to not go in the frame of mind to be tellers? And what I mean by that is, we are prone, particularly in our culture, we like to tell people stuff. And I'm going to offer that maybe we start from a place of asking questions so that we tell less and ask more. Most of us don't like to be told what we think, feel, and believe. So let me give you this as an example. You're irritated, you're frustrated, you're angry, right? And so maybe you're complaining, you're whining, you're kind of venting, right? We use that word as if that's a good thing. We vent, and there's moments and appropriateness to that, but typically that's just a guise for, we just want to be inappropriate. And in the moment of venting and complaining and being angry and upset, someone says, geez, Jim, you've got to calm down. And my guess at this moment right now, you're all like, oh my gosh, right? Now, that person who told me to calm down, I'm going to smack them. All right. I mean, let's just be honest. Don't tell me to calm down, right? And now we're just all set off about being told to calm down because we don't like to be told what we think, feel, and believe. The crazy thing about it too is those people. So think about it as the person who's telling. So this negative person, go back to the angry person, say, you need to calm down. I mean, how many times in your life have you said that, or someone that said that to you, and I go, oh, wow, thank you. No one's ever told me just to calm down. But now that you've told me that, it's all better. Whatever I was upset about, frustrated about, whining about, complaining about, needing to vent about, angry about, it's all gone. It's all gone. It's all better because you told me to calm down. Thank you. Notice the sarcasm, right? Because that never happens. But yet we and others, we do this because somehow we think it will work this time. Well, it's the same thing with a negative coworker that may be whining and complaining and just kind of negative about everything. I think sometimes if we're going to go intervene with them, we start by a place of telling them that, oh, you're just being so negative. You just need to find the positive things. You just need to stop being so negative. And if you've ever done that or been on the receiving end, how does that work out? How many times has it happened that when you've said that, the person looks at you and goes, oh, well, you know what? You're right. Being positive is much better. Now that you've said that to me, I will stop being negative now and see the positive in it. And you know what? Life is really much, much better. Thank you. Never happens, right? But yet, these are the types of things that we do and say, or others do and say to us. And, again, the sarcasm and just having some fun with it. But there's some truth to that. That's typically how it goes. And it just doesn't work. So let's figure out a way. One, let's get ourselves ready, mentally, emotionally prepared, so we can handle this well. Two, let's go into it with a different frame of mind that we're not going to tell, but we're going to ask. So my biggest thought out of the gate is, if someone's whining and complaining, and walking away is not the best solution because of, and it treats you kind of hit it well, is we have to have a relationship with them. And so walking away just prolongs it and puts it off. So we realize, okay, that's at some point in time, we've got to deal with this. So we decided we have to deal with it. We've got ourselves emotionally, mentally ready. Maybe we talk to our supervisor to kind of role play or talk through, how does this going to go? I get myself in the frame of mind that I'm really caring about them and not my own needs and wants, so that maybe I can get away from having this strong desire to go tell them stuff, but that I can maybe engage in trying to understand them. So to me, the third part of our conversation today goes to this. And Stephen Covey simply said it this way: Seek first to understand and then to be understood. And to some degree, that probably sounds so simple, but I think it's incredibly profound and crazy hard to do. Can we go to this person and say, and go in with the frame of mind, Jim, I'm really concerned about how negative, upset, frustrated, whatever the emotions are, and I want to understand. I want to hear and I want to care. I may not be able to fix it, I don't know, but can I help listen to them enough to validate their emotions? You know, validate doesn't mean agree. I can understand you're frustrated. That doesn't say I agree, I think you should be. But the opposing thought is, and some people now are like, oh, so we're just going to let them whine more. No. But what the other solution is that I look at them and say, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Again, how well does that work? Have you ever had somebody tell you that? You say, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Oh, now you tell me that, I don't. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work, and it's not real, and it's just not true. So what I would offer to us today, as we our time just goes by so fast, is that can we sit down with that person one-on-one privately and authentically and genuinely care about them? And it may go something like this. I may say, Jim, you know what? I've been listening to you over the last few weeks or few months or since I've known you, and it seems like there's some things that are really frustrating you and bothering you. You shared with me a number of times just how upset you are, frustrated, or concerned about things, and I'm just wondering kind of where you're at. I just wanted to hear how you're doing with work or with this, whatever the issue is, and just love to hear your thoughts. Now, that being said, I can imagine if I were in your shoes, I'd be going, well, that's all well and good, but here they go. They're just going to whine and complain more. And I'm like, well, to some degree at that moment, yes. But I think what happens, and in my experience by using this strategy of asking and then listening, we start to move them, and they will then begin to switch gears to find out what do we do, because it would look something like this. And Teresa, I'll just pick on you as a name as you shared some of your thoughts. And, you know, we don't have it turned on right now, we can actually talk, but I would actually role play. So I might say, so Teresa, you know, I've just been noticing that you've been kind of bummed out or frustrated or again, just kind of negative about, you know, this particular leader or this particular issue. And I'm just wondering kind of where you're at with that and what's going on. And I just like to better understand. I find a majority of the time, and almost 99% of the time, Teresa is going to kind of share. I mean, because they want to, right? They've got a lot of emotions pent up. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, it drives me nuts. And you're going to listen for a couple minutes. And then you're going to reflect back what you heard them say. I'm just going to say, Teresa, it sounds like that when they made that decision, they didn't really involve you or others to get input, and that really bothers you. Yes, and we're going to start to move them with our questions, because eventually I can get to a question. Well, Teresa, I'm just curious. What do you see as potential solutions, or where do you go from here? Do you see that? Just, I guess I'm wondering, is your plan or goal that every day from this day forward, as long as you're here, that you're just going to need to complain about it and vent about it? And Teresa, you're absolutely right. It is tricky with a peer, right? Because you don't have the authority. We don't have any sort of position to kind of drive this. So we have to use persuasion and influence. And my goal is to try to see if they're willing to understand the impact it has on others eventually, through a series of questions, by not telling them, because if we tell them, they're not going to receive that well. So I may even eventually, you know, when I ask, I may ask that question like I just shared, what do you see as kind of the long-term plan here, as far as, you know, you're clearly upset about it, frustrated about it. Where does that go from here? I think sometimes you'll see them, they're not sure, but now their brain is thinking. The goal is to try to move them from an emotional, irrational processing and response to a thinking and rational process and thoughts. And Teresa, I may even get to the point where I can ask them the question, well, Teresa, when you're sharing these frustrations and concerns with a number of people, every day. How do you think that's impacting people? Where do you think they're at? How are they perceiving that from you? That's a tough question, isn't it? This is crazy hard to do, by the way. It's not easy. It's simple, I guess, to some degree to understand it, but it's hard to do because it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to not simply just ignore it or walk away or to lash out in return or to go behind their backs and talk badly about them. It actually takes people of courage to step up and go, you know what? We're actually going to try to address this in a candid and direct fashion. And the reason I share that is because I think being candid and direct is the most loving and kind thing we can do. My guess is that may sound very contrary to the norm because most of us, we avoid. We don't want to have these tough conversations, and we think that's the best thing. And I'm going to suggest I don't think it is. I think one of the most loving and kind things we can do is if we can talk to that person directly. And we can be honest and sincere and genuine with them in a direct, firm, but kind and gentle way. So I could look and say, Teresa, you know what? I get that you're frustrated. I can actually understand it. I'm just wondering at what point in time does that just become so consuming? And then what does that do to the other relationships you have with other people around? Those are tough questions. I think if we can get to the point of asking those questions, I think that builds relationship capital with most people. And even if they reject it, even if they're like, oh, you just don't get it, understand. Okay, no, I understand. And we may say, no, I appreciate that. Just wanted to kind of talk through that a little bit. Thanks for your time. And I let it go, right? Because I can't make them. At the same time, what you may find is they may stop whining and complaining as much with you. Why? Because they know now that you know it and you're aware of it and you're not a fan. Even though you didn't have to say all that, they get that. You'll find more often than not their behaviors start to change around you because they're like, well, I don't want to have that conversation again. At minimum, if they didn't want to embrace and engage with you to try to listen and learn, at least they start to go, well, I don't want to have any more of those conversations. And Jim, well, he's probably going to do it again. So how about I just not whine and complain to him? And at minimum, I'm like, that's a win. Great. At least for me, I don't have to deal with that anymore, but I still get to work with you because we had an honest dialogue. It's not weird and awkward. I can still just talk to you. And like you say, sometimes we have to get work from them or do work with them. So let me stop there with the couple minutes we have left. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions you have, just type them in. I'll give you a minute here to ask any questions. Let me know if that makes sense, doesn't, agree, disagree, like it, don't like it. I look to Gregory, Gretchen, Danielle. Any thoughts from you, questions from you, Teresa? I really have been very, very appreciative each webinar that your thoughts and comments. They're very insightful and helpful. So please keep sharing. Do you have any other thoughts today for us, or questions or comments? But Gregory, and Gretchen and Danielle, we have a small group. Do you have any other thoughts? Teresa, I think that is a great way to do it too, is how do we redirect? You made me think one of the things that when we go to intervene in people's lives, the goal is to intervene as little as possible. So when I think about that is sometimes, it's a lot like raising kids, but our friends, our family members, colleagues, we kind of just give a look. I'd go, right? And they're like, okay, got it. We're intervening with people all day long by the things we say and do and how we say and do it. The approach that we're kind of talking through today is a pretty, it's a step along, it's a greater degree of intervention, right? Because I'm being a bit more direct about it. So I think, Teresa, that's very fair. I think trying to redirect in some positive directions. Maybe we try to find some positives out of things. Maybe we try to help them say, yeah, that's tough. Over here, though, these things are going really well. Or we may even say, yeah, I can see how this is tough. Here's some good stuff with that, though. Even though there's some downsides to it, here's some of the upsides, right? we can try to help, or we say, well, let's focus on this over here, and we can move to a different issue or a different topic. I think all that to me is kind of in this bucket of how do we redirect and how do we move them in a positive direction and using more of the affirmation. I think you're absolutely right, and those are great things. Today, the strategy I was kind of sharing jumps more, I think, into a greater degree of intervention, which maybe not something right out the gate we would do. So, Teresa, thank you. That's a great point. Other thoughts from anybody? Well, again, as always, I'll stick around for a couple minutes here to see if everybody has any other comments or questions. Feel free to go to our YouTube page and see a lot more videos. There's 30-some videos out there on topics like this. Continue to come to our webinars, share it with others to come and join us and have a discussion, to challenge ourselves to learn and to do better each day. Feel free to utilize the resources on our website. We have our free online assessment that we announced at our last webinar that's available via our website. A great one based off of this topic too is we have a free conflict challenge course, and it's 14 days long. And basically, you'll get an email with a video and things to do every day, a challenge every day for 14 days to help us to be better at dealing with conflict, which this would fit in. So all those resources there for you. Love to have you take advantage of them. Teresa, again, as always, thanks so much. I appreciate you being here. Greg and Gretchen and Danielle, thanks for joining us. Feel free to like us and join us on any of our social media places. Share this with others. The more people, the merrier, all right? Have a great day. Enjoy a little bit of the sunny weather. Danielle just posted the link to our conflict course. It's free. You can certainly register to that. It's very easy. Email name, and you're off and running. You'll start receiving those. Again, everybody, thank you again. Have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.